Hey, what's going on, guys? I hope you all are doing well today. Elliot here, welcome back to The Fragrance Well. Today, we are going to be going over 10 fragrances that in my collection, I consider 10 out of 10 masterpieces. The fragrances are perfect in my opinion. There is nothing about them that I have to complain about and nothing about them that I would change. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button. It doesn't cost you anything. And if you like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. The first one's coming from the house of Amouage, and I made sure to not repeat any fragrances from the same houses for this video. This is Journeyman. Amouage Journeyman is the first one. I've spoken about this fragrance quite a bit on the channel. I've already made it known on more than one occasion that this fragrance is an absolute love of mine. And you know what? It's a 10 out of 10. This is actually a blind buy for me. And when I got it in, I loved it at first sniff. And I think I've had this for maybe a year now, and no complaints. I love everything about the fragrance. It is a spicy tobacco fragrance. The fragrance was perfumed by Alberto Morillas and Pierre Negrin. Kudos to them, because this one here, I love it. You have a great combination of fresh spiciness as well as warm spices. There's a bit of a floral undertone with that spiciness. You have tobacco in here. You have a little bit of a smokiness to it. You get a touch of sweetness that actually for me has become more and more apparent the longer I've had the fragrance. There is tonka bean in the base of the fragrance, but I never really could pick it up that well, but I definitely get it now. As the fragrance has macerated with time, the sweetness has actually come out, but it's just a touch of it just there to balance out the spicy nature of the fragrance. You've also got some woody characteristics and a little bit of a leathery touch sitting way in the background there. Would I say this is the best spicy tobacco fragrance there is on the market? Probably not, but it doesn't change the fact that I absolutely love everything about this fragrance, so that makes it a 10 out of 10 masterpiece for me. Amouage Journeyman. All right, so the next one's coming from the house of Marc-Antoine Barras, another one I've been talking about a lot lately, Ganymede. Marc-Antoine Barras, Ganymede. This one here is definitely a hype beast for sure. Those that love it, love it. Those that don't, don't. But for me, ever since I got my nose on this fragrance, it's not a blind buy. I did sample it ahead of time and got it, I think like right around the onset of summertime or like late spring this year. Have been wearing it quite a few times since then. Have loved every aspect of this fragrance. I love the mineral-like qualities to it. There's some mandarin in this, and it mixes with the immortelle in a way to kind of give it kind of a burnt sugar vibe, in my opinion. There's a leathery nature to the fragrance. I just love wearing it because it's so unique, so different, and it just gives me a really pleasant wearing experience. A masterful, and as far as I know, award-winning fragrance perfumed by Quentin Biche. I don't know if everybody who likes this fragrance would consider it a masterpiece, but I know I do. 10 out of 10 for me. This is Ganymede from Marc-Antoine Barras. All right, moving on. Next one's coming from the house of Parfums de Empire. This is Ombre Roose. I think that's how you say it. Ombre Roose. Man, first of all, this is a blind buy for me. It's the latest, this is the latest addition I have in my collection out of all the fragrances on this list. And basically, as soon as I put my nose on it, mine was blown. Mine was blown. This is an amber fragrance. Obviously, the name implies that. And it is just, it instantly jumped to the top of the list out of all the amber fragrances I have, which, to be fair, I don't have a ton, but that are of this kind of quality. But man, this blew my mind. You got spices to go along with this really great woody amber quality. It's got a little bit of sweetness to go along with it, giving it this sensual quality to it. You got green accords kind of hiding up in there as well. This one makes me think, I know amber does not have a realistic smell. It's an imaginary note, if you will, but this one takes me and transports me like to the woods. It makes me think I'm out in nature. It's the weirdest thing. You know, I don't think that's the first thing a lot of people think of when they think of an amber fragrance, but that's what this one does for me. So it transports me somewhere. It smells amazing. 10 out of 10 fragrance. This one was perfumed by Marc-Antoine Cortecciato. I hope I'm saying his name right. Well done to you, sir. Absolutely love this fragrance. 10 out of 10 Ombre Roose from the house of Parfums de Empire. All right, guys, so the next one's coming from the house of Tom Ford. This is Beau de Jour. Tom Ford, Beau de Jour, another one I've talked about quite a bit on this channel. This one is perfumed by Antoine Maison. It is a Very modern take on the classic gentleman's aromatic fougere fragrance. You got lavender, you got oak moss, amber, and patchouli. This one was not a love when I first got it. I did like it, but I had not really experienced that strong lavender opening when I was testing this in stores. So it took me a little while to get used to that, but the more and more I wore this fragrance, the more I fell in love with it, now to the point where that lavender opening certainly does not bother me, and otherwise I have no qualms with this fragrance. I'm not one for doing the whole if I only had to have one of this or that in my collection, because it's never gonna happen. But one thing I can say, if I was gonna have an aromatic fougere barbershop style fragrance and only one, it would be this one as it stands right now. Once again, from the house of Tom Ford, Beau de Jour. All right, so the next one's coming from the house of Nishane. This is Hassavad. Nishane's Hassavad. Popular one for sure, probably on a lot of people's masterpiece list, and I'm right on that bandwagon. Very famous for, being a similar Aventus style fragrance, but I actually like this way more than Aventus. Perfumed by Jorge Lee. Lots of pineapple, lots of bergamot, very sharp, fresh, citrusy opening, and lots of oak moss to go along with it. This is by far my favorite summertime warm weather fragrance to wear. This was also a blind buy for me that just happened to work out and turn into a masterpiece fragrance, so I'm doing pretty well in that department, I guess. Again, there's nothing about the fragrance that I have any complaints about. I love wearing it, I love how it smells, I love how it makes me feel, I love what it does from a functionality standpoint, making it an easy 10 out of 10 masterpiece choice for me. Hassavad from Nishane. Alright, so the next one's coming from the house of Parfums de Marly. This is Herod. Parfums de Marly's Herod. Another tobacco fragrance with spices, but also has a lot of sweetness and vanilla and a little bit of smokiness to it. This is more of a sexier take on a spicy tobacco fragrance compared to Journeyman, but boy do I love this fragrance. Another one that was not a love at first sniff, primarily because I did not like the way it smelled on a tester strip, and I had tested it multiple times and I was just like, I don't get what the big deal is with this fragrance, but one time I decided to spray it on skin and literally my attitude changed instantly. It instantly became a love, and since I've worn it a number of times since then, now I consider this a masterpiece. Perfumed by the late Olivier Pachot, rest in peace to him. As far as I'm concerned, this is still one of Parfums de Marly's best releases. Obviously, it's now pretty much overshadowed by fragrances like Leighton and Carlisle, but it's still right up there in terms of popularity. Probably doesn't get talked about as much now because, it's been reformulated and watered down. It still smells amazing. I don't really care. It's still a masterpiece in my opinion. Parfums de Marly's Herod. Okay, so the next one's coming from the house of the Harmonist. This is Hypnotizing Fire. The Harmonist Hypnotizing Fire. The perfumer's name is very difficult to pronounce and I don't want to butcher it, so I'll just put it somewhere on the screen. But this one here is a spicy, woody, sweet, slightly gourmand fragrance. First of all, the quality of this is unmatched. You get fresh spices, you get warm spices, you get woody aspects of it, and the quality of the ingredients used in this fragrance are unmatched in my opinion. It smells great, it has an alluring quality to it. I love wearing it, it takes you on a journey. My favorite thing about this fragrance is that it literally paints an image in my mind of watching a fire from start to finish. Kind of like a campfire, if you will, not a fire in a fireplace. Any fragrance in my mind that kind of checks all the other boxes but also can give you an imagery that's not, actually physically in front of you while you're wearing it is always going to be something that's going to be a step above a lot of other fragrances in my collection. This one, I think, does that the best out of all the fragrances I currently have at this time. So as far as I'm concerned, that makes it a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Once again, from the house of the Harmonist, this is Hypnotizing Fire. Okay guys, so the next one's coming from the house of Guerlain. Lynstone Diggerland Eau de Parfum. Lynstone Diggerland Eau de Parfum. Perfumed by Beatrice Piquet. And this is another one that as soon as I got my nose on it, mind blown. I actually came across this fragrance at a duty-free store in an airport. I sprayed it on my skin, was immediately blown away by it, went ahead and bought a bottle because it's been hard to kind of find this on discounters lately. I don't know what's up with a lot of the Guerlain fragrances, they just don't show up on discounters anymore, but I said, hey, this one's good enough, I'll pay full retail for it, and was blown away by the wearing experience for the rest of my travels that day. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I went ahead and grabbed this. I would call this, To me, it's mostly a tea fragrance, but it's really just a gourmand concoction of a lot of things. You got some really sharp kind of zingy citrus in the opening. You got spice from star anise. You've got a lot of chocolatey characteristics from patchouli. There's floral aspects. There's slightly woody aspects. The fragrance in general kind of reminds me of a chai tea. This was not an instant masterpiece for me because that opening was a little strange to me at first. I kind of had to get used to it, but once I did, I was like, yeah, I have no other complaints. I like the opening now. I think, the bottle was new. It just kind of had to sit for a little bit. So now, as far as I'm concerned, it is a masterpiece of a fragrance. And Guerlain makes great fragrances anyway that continue to blow my mind the more ones that I haven't already had experience with I find out about. So, another 10 out of 10, Lynstone Diggerland from the House of Guerlain. All right, guys, so the next one's coming from the House of Hermes. This is Terre d'Hermes Eau Givrée. Terre d'Hermes Eau Givrée. So the fragrance was perfumed by Christine Nagel, and it is basically grapefruit juice, some woody accords, and some vetiver, and man, it is done masterfully. This is another one that as soon as I got my nose on it, when I first got a sample of it, blew my mind. I could not believe how good that citrus was in the opening. The listed note is citron. Citron's very similar to grapefruit. For anybody who's had it, you already know. It being a Terre d'Hermes fragrance, it's automatically gonna have some vetiver in it. It also just has some woodiness to go along with it. Fragrance is very simple, but it is done masterfully. Does not need to be a crazy, complex, all over the place fragrance for it to be a masterpiece. Beautiful fragrance for the high heat for the summertime, has some classiness to it as well. This is probably my favorite designer summer-based fragrance release that I've ever bought. As long as you can stomach the smell of grapefruit-like accords, there's no reason not to like this fragrance because even the vetiver in it is not like something that's super forward or dirty or earthy or anything like that. It's just a fresh, clean, kind of grassy, woody vetiver that I think, hey, if you like the grapefruit accord, you'll like the fragrance in general. But it's a masterpiece for me. Terre d'Hermes Eau Givrée. All right, guys, last but not least, coming from the House of Gershoff, this is Alexandria 2. Gershoff Alexandria 2. I could not find the information for the perfumer of this fragrance. If anybody happens to know, put it down in the comments below. But this is a spicy, woody, oriental style fragrance. Ever since I smelled this fragrance, another one that just blew my mind, and every time I've worn it, I've just been happy. Like I said, you're gonna get some spiciness to it. It has kind of a sparkliness to it in the opening, has a little bit of fruity accords. Once it dries down, you get, kind of a mix of florals. Nothing really stands out, although rose is listed as an accord in this fragrance. It just kind of blends nicely, but the best thing about this to me is the woody characteristics that you get from the different types of oud in this fragrance. I believe there's Thai oud, and I think there's Laotian oud. All of that combines together with the other accords in the base to give woodiness first and foremost, but you also get like green-like accords, almost foresty-like accords. There's a little bit of sweetness. There's even a hint of smokiness in the background. I mean, it's just, fragrance just exudes luxury in the Arabian style of perfumery. Is this necessarily the best fragrance Gershoff ever put out? No, it's not, but I love every bit of this fragrance. I love wearing it. I love how it smells, and it's, like I said, it just makes me happy when I wear it. Once again, from Gershoff Alexandria 2. All right, guys, that's it. That was 10 fragrances that I consider masterpieces in my collection. Put down in the comments below a couple of masterpieces that you consider 10 out of 10. Just share a couple of them. I'm always curious to see what other people think is the best form of perfumery that they can experience. Remember to be well and smell well, and I will see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.